it was law. But once I began to realize that it was basically not fair, I began to wonder. This isn't right, but what can be done about it? I didn't know. I didn't have the ability to address it. By the way, that realization, that growing awareness did eventually lead me towards the decision to study law. But not immediately, you see. I had to grow into it.
Plus, you're also experiencing it. And when you just told me you were in Camp Van Dorn, in my book, I'll document there it was rife with race riots that were happening
Yes.
there. So at
Yes.
Camp Van Dorn, as I have read about it, but not experienced it, of course, that that there are white troops that are there as well as black troops, but
Yes.
kept very much separate. Describe to me what you remember about Camp Van Dorn. I know you were in basic training and you're 12 hours a day, but tell me what it was like at Camp Van Dorn.
It wasn't very nice. Of course, we did our basic training. You in the military, you conform to a rigid disciplinary regimen, and of course, you don't get much of a chance to think about the atmosphere. You just do what you're told. Surrounded one of the black battalions with half-tracks and weapons. There were occasional involvements of some of our troops with people in the civilian community. One or two of our men were accused of rape. I have no idea about whether they were guilty, but I do know that they were charged and tried and convicted. Of course, I had no, as best I can recall, no personal interaction with people in the civilian community. All of my interactions with other people were with people in the military. Now, as you have pointed out, we were black troops, but our officers were white. And of course, many of these officers were out and out racists who treated us with much disdain and disrespect. Of course, they had the benefit of rank, and so you had to salute them, and you had to answer them yes sir and no sir, and you had to conform to the rigid military discipline, meted out, as it were, by people who undoubtedly hated you because of the color of your skin.
Did you know there was a policy to actually put government policy, military policy, to have white officers of black troops and white Southerners as officers?
I did not know of such a policy. I'm prepared to just about bet you that there was such a policy.
And as a college student, you might have had the opportunity more than, say, some of the other men that you were with,
Yes,
to go into officer candidate school. Did anybody ever try to promote that for you, or try?
Yes, I was notified about the availability of officer corps training. And I believe I submitted an application, but it was rejected. Few young black soldiers, of course, were admitted, became second lieutenants. None were assigned to our outfit.
Oh, you didn't even have a second lieutenant or say like a master sergeant or something?
Oh, we had sergeants.
Sergeants, okay.
All of the non-commissioned officers were black. And of course, our first sergeant was an old, I say old, he was certainly quite a mature gentleman, not an educated man, who had been in the service for something in excess of 30 years. Here I was, here were all of us young draftees, were young men in our early 20s. And so Top, that's what we started calling him, was he was a non-commissioned officer who was steeped in the traditions of the military.
Did Top Kick, did he tell you about the Buffalo Soldiers of the West?
No. Let me pause. I don't recall that he did. We didn't get a chance to interact with him very much on matters. He issued orders, and he expected you to obey them. And he was a master of language that was designed to get you to do whatever he ordered you to do. He could literally make you feel like nothing with words.
So you, after 90 days, you're ready to go into the service, and with all your skills, you were assigned into the quartermaster unit?
Quartermaster.
And what's your particular, they call it an MOS, what's your job that you are doing?
Well, in the quartermaster, you do whatever you're directed to do. But of course, we ultimately were assigned to handle supplies. Many quartermaster troops were assigned to things like grave digging. Some were assigned to driving trucks, all sorts of labor intense activity. But also, you see, we were given infantry training. We were taught to fight, and we were led to believe that we were being trained to fight the enemy. And of course, you know, you developed a sense of pride in the uniform of an American soldier, which of course is a point that I'm sometimes quoted. I had an experience, was traveling from Mississippi to South Carolina on a pass. Don't know if you've heard this story. You have, but had to change trains. By the way, this was before air travel. We were traveling by train, and we had to change trains in Alabama. My recollection is I'm talking about Montgomery. No, I said Montgomery. My recollection is it was Birmingham. And of course, the railroad station, of course. Yeah. And the stations in all southern communities, why it was racially segregated. There was a restaurant, and of course, if you were black, well, you couldn't go in that restaurant. It was for white people only. Now you could, as a black, go around to the window out just of the kitchen and order whatever you wanted through that window, pay for it, which I did. I recall it was cold and damp. Now our nation was already at war with the Italians and had begun capturing Italian soldiers. And so there were perhaps several prisoner of war camps in the United States where these foreign prisoners of war were being brought. Well, as I stood outside this restaurant, I managed to look into the dining room, and here were a number of young men in uniforms, white men. I later learned they were Italian prisoners of war, having been captured over there, being brought into the United States en route to a prisoner of war camp. And of course, the young women were serving them, friendly, you know, young women exposed to handsome young men in uniforms. Didn't matter to them that they were supposedly the enemy. You could tell they were smiling and there was rather cheerful bantering going on. Now, realize I grew up under a segregated system. I had grown up initially feeling that it was just the way things were, that it was nothing wrong with it. As I grew intellectually, I began to question in my mind whether it was correct. I came to a point at which I decided that it wasn't right. Now, at this moment, here I am, a young man wearing the uniform of my country, being trained to engage the enemy in battle. I'm an American soldier, and I'm denied the right to go into this restaurant and eat, and lo and behold, here we are entertaining foreign prisoners of war in a situation in which they are being accorded decency and everything. Now, at that moment, you see, now, mind you, this isn't the first time I had experienced that. I knew of it. I'd been exposed to it here in my own state. But all of a sudden, it occurred to me, this isn't right. And I experienced a level of insult that reverberates to this very day. I do mean out and out insult, dismay.
That's obviously a moment of your consciousness rising because of what you see right in front of you.
Yes.
Had you been reading the newspapers, the black press, or Du Bois, who is, all the papers that are saying double victory, victory at home, victory abroad, and so you're thinking you're going to go over overseas and sort of combat this racism, and now you're
I hadn't
seeing it
in my mind. I hadn't exactly carried my concepts into foreign communities. It's just that as I saw it right here in my own country, I was insulted. This was to me an affront, not only to me as an individual, but it was an affront to my entire race of people.
And Judge, you're in the soldier's khakis that you're wearing here too. You were seeing yourself as an American soldier. Were you seeing yourself as an American citizen as well?
Well, I must have been. I'm going to give you an affirmative answer to that, although I was not steeped up in the 14th Amendment yet. And its declaration that all persons born or naturalized in the United States are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. That had to come later in my mind. It hadn't yet, but at that moment, whatever citizenship meant to me at that time, yes, I felt it. And I was insulted. I was insulted.
You could see, I don't even think you're 21 at this point, so you're not thinking I'm going to go out and go vote, but you are certainly wearing the uniform. You are the omni-American, if you will, and you are just about to go overseas. Tell me
Yes.
what you experienced, and you have to, you go back for your leave, and then, more training, and then you're sent overseas.
That's right. Yes.
Tell me about where did you go and your
Well,
troop trip.
Troop trip, they put us on an old English ship. The American shipping industry, of course, was manufacturing and building ships, but none was ready for us at the time. They put us on an old English ship called the Cape Town Castle, as I can recall it. And I don't know how many troops were put on that ship. A lot of us were on it. And it must have taken us nearly 2 weeks to make the trip across the Atlantic before we landed at Liverpool, England. By the way, I had never traveled by